The sirens screamed to the desert night, like wounded animals, their red and blue lights slicing across razor wire and concrete towers. Floodlights snapped on one by one, bathing the outer walls of Black Rock Federal Penitentiary in harsh white glare. From the highway, the prison looked less like a building and more like a fortress carved into the earth. Thick walls, gun towers, and electronic fences humming with lethal electricity. Inside those walls, something had gone terribly wrong. At 2:17 a.m., a guard named Marcus Hale collapsed in cell block D, his body crumpling to the polished concrete floor as inmates began to pound on their doors. By the time the response team arrived, Hale was dead. No weapon, no blood spray, just a single, deliberate puncture at the base of the skull, small and precise, as if done with surgical intent. Black Rock wasn't just any prison. It was advertised as the most secure correctional facility in the Western Hemisphere, a place built to hold men the world wanted erased. International drug lords, cartel financiers, contract killers, and gang leaders whose names never appeared in newspapers but echoed through police briefings and sealed courtrooms. Escape-proof, riot-proof, untouchable, and yet a guard was dead. By sunrise, the FBI had sealed off the facility. Helicopters circled overhead. Every inmate was locked down, hands zip-tied behind their backs, faces pressed to cold steel doors. Warden Evelyn Cross stood in the control room, staring at the monitors with hollow eyes. In 25 years of federal service, she had never seen anything like this. "Someone did this on purpose," she said quietly, "and they wanted us to know." Black Rock Federal Penitentiary sat 70 miles from the nearest town, surrounded by scorched desert and silence. No trees, no cover, no place to run. That was the point. The prison was a final destination, designed after a series of humiliating escapes from older supermax facilities in the early 2000s. Here, every movement was tracked, every conversation recorded. Even the air vents were monitored for vibrations. Inmates spent 23 hours a day alone. Meals were delivered through slots. Showers were timed. Exercise took place in individual concrete pens open to the sky. There were no communal spaces, no alliances, no gangs. At least, that's what the system claimed. But the system lied. Behind the walls, gangs didn't just survive. They evolved. They learned to communicate without speaking, to pass orders through guards, lawyers, and coded letters disguised as legal filings. They turned isolation into insulation. And at the top of that invisible hierarchy sat men who ruled not with fists, but with fear. One of those men was Daniel El Lobo Reyes. Reyes had arrived at Black Rock 4 years earlier, shackled and sedated after a violent extradition from Mexico. He was accused of orchestrating hundreds of murders, moving billions in narcotics, and corrupting entire police departments. The media called him a ghost. Prosecutors called him a nightmare. Inside Black Rock, inmates called him something else entirely. They called him the architect, because wherever Reyes went, systems broke. Special Agent Lucas Reed arrived at Black Rock just after dawn. He was a veteran of organized crime investigations, a man with tired eyes and a reputation for seeing patterns others missed. As he walked through the Sally Port, the heavy doors slamming shut behind him, Reed felt a familiar tightening in his chest. "This place doesn't feel like a prison," he muttered. "It feels like a tomb." He was met by Captain Nora Vance, head of internal security. She led him through sterile hallways lined with cameras, every step echoing off concrete walls. "Guard Hale was found here," she said, stopping outside cell block D. The air was thick with disinfectant, the smell sharp and artificial. No signs of a struggle, no alarms triggered. It's like he just shut off. Reed crouched beside the chalk outline still faintly visible on the floor. He studied the spot where Hale's head had struck the concrete. "A puncture wound," he said. "Small, precise. That's not random." "No weapons were found," Vance replied, "and every inmate was locked in." Reed stood slowly. Then someone had help. As investigators combed through surveillance footage, something even more unsettling emerged. At 2:11 a.m., 6 minutes before Hale's death, the cameras in cell block D experienced a synchronized glitch. Not a blackout, not static, Just a loop. The same 10 seconds of empty hallway, replayed over and over again. That's impossible, one technician whispered. These systems are isolated. No external access. Reed watched the footage again, his jaw tightening. Then it was internal. The question wasn't who could do this. It was who would dare. Word of the death spread through Black Rock faster than any announcement. Inmates whispered through vents. Guards avoided eye contact. For the first time in years, fear shifted direction. It wasn't aimed at the men in cells. It was aimed inward. In cell 312, Daniel Reyes sat calmly on his bunk, hands folded, eyes closed. When a guard passed by, Reyes opened one eye and smiled faintly. He had known this would happen. Reed spent the afternoon reviewing files, gang affiliations, disciplinary records, intercepted communications. One name kept surfacing, buried under layers of redacted reports and sealed indictments. Daniel Reyes. Every major incident at Black Rock over the past 4 years. Smuggling attempts, unexplained suicides, guards abruptly resigning. Somehow traced back to inmates connected to Reyes' network. Yet Reyes himself had a spotless disciplinary record. He hasn't had so much as a write-up, Reed said to Warden Cross. That's not control. That's command. Cross rubbed her temples. You're saying he runs a prison. I'm saying he doesn't need to touch it to own it. As night fell, Reed requested access to a restricted area beneath Cell Block D, a maintenance corridor sealed off years earlier after structural upgrades. The request was denied at first, then approved, reluctantly. 2 guards escorted Reed down a narrow stairwell, the air growing colder with each step. The corridor below was dim, lined with old conduit pipes and forgotten junction boxes. Dust coated the floor undisturbed, until Reed noticed the footprints. Fresh, boot-sized, leading to a steel door at the end of the hall. What's behind that? Reed asked. The guards exchanged a glance. That area is not on any current map, one said. It was decommissioned. Reed stepped closer, heart pounding. The door was locked, but the lock looked new. Someone had been here. Someone had planned this. Reed turned back to the guards. Get me the warden, and don't open that door. But it was already too late, because when they finally forced it open, what they found inside would prove that Black Rock wasn't just a prison. It was a headquarters, and the deadliest gang in the world was running it from the inside. The door groaned as it swung inward, metal scraping against concrete that hadn't felt human presence in years. The smell hit first, stale air mixed with oil rust and something far worse. Agent Lucas Reed stepped into the hidden chamber beneath Cell Block D, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness in sharp, nervous arcs. What stared back at him was not a forgotten maintenance room. It was a control center. Wires ran along the walls in organized bundles, feeding into unauthorized routers, signal boosters, and stripped-down surveillance terminals. Handwritten charts were pinned to corkboards, detailing guard rotations, camera blind spots, supply schedules, and inmate movements. Names were circled. Dates were crossed out. Some had red marks beside them. Marcus Hale's name was there, too. Reed felt a chill crawl up his spine. This wasn't improvisation. This was infrastructure. Jesus, Captain Nora Vance whispered behind him. This has been here for years. Reed crouched beside a desk bolted to the floor. On it sat a small medical tray, syringes, alcohol wipes, and a single hollow needle barely thicker than a pin. He didn't need a lab report to know what it meant. A neurotoxin delivery, Reed said quietly, fast-acting, minimal trace. Someone brushed past him, injected the base of his skull, and walked away. Vance swallowed hard. Inside the most secure prison in the world. Reed straightened, his mind racing. This room didn't just help them kill Hale. It helped them see everything, predict everything, and hide everything, Vance added. Reed's radio crackled. Agent Reed, you need to come up to the infirmary. Now. Inmate Luis Moreno lay strapped to a gurney, his face pale, lips tinged blue. Moreno was a mid-level gang lieutenant with known ties to Reyes' old cartel operations. Officially, he collapsed during lockdown from a heart condition. Unofficially, Reed knew better. What happened? Reed asked the prison doctor. He started convulsing, the doctor replied. Then cardiac arrest. We revived him, but he's not conscious. Reed leaned closer, scanning Moreno's neck. There it was, a tiny red dot, almost invisible. Their cleaning house, Reed said under his breath. Vance stiffened. You think this is connected to Hale? I think Hale was a message, Reed replied. Moreno is damage control. By nightfall, Black Rock was no longer just locked down. It was paralyzed. Guards were pulled in pairs. Supervisors triple-checked IDs. The warden authorized emergency transfers for high-risk inmates. But every request stalled in bureaucracy. Someone didn't want prisoners moved. Someone wanted them right where they were. Reed stood in the observation room, overlooking cell 312. Daniel Reyes sat at the small steel table, calmly eating his dinner. His movements were deliberate, almost ceremonial. He didn't look like a man trapped. He looked like a man waiting. You ever get the feeling, Reed said to Vance, that we're already too late? Vance didn't answer. That night, Reed requested an interview with Reyes. The request went up the chain, debated, delayed, and finally approved under one condition. Reyes would remain restrained behind glass, and the conversation would be recorded. Reed entered the interview room alone. Reyes sat on the other side, wrists cuffed, posture relaxed. He smiled as Reed took his seat. Agent Reed, Reyes said softly, I was wondering when you'd come. Reed didn't blink. A guard is dead. Reyes' smile faded just enough to be convincing. Tragic. You ran him. Reed said, You ran all of this. Reyes tilted his head. You give me too much credit. I'm just an inmate. Reed slid a photo across the table. The hidden chamber, the charts, the equipment. Reyes glanced at it, unimpressed. You Americans love your toys. Reed leaned forward. That room exists because you allowed it. That guard died because you ordered it. Reyes' eyes met his. For the first time, the warmth drained away, replaced by something cold and ancient. You think this prison is controlled by locks and walls. Reyes said, but prisons are built on people, and people can be persuaded. Persuaded into murder? Reed shot back. Reyes smiled again. Murder is such an ugly word. I prefer correction. Reed felt the weight of the glass between them, suddenly thin. You're not untouchable. Reyes' voice dropped to a whisper. Everyone is touchable, including you. 2 hours later, Reed's hotel room phone rang. It was the warden. Agent Reed, Cross said, her voice shaking. Captain Vance is missing. Security footage showed Vance leaving the control room at 11:43 p.m., heading toward the administrative wing. She never arrived. Cameras glitched again, 10 seconds looping just like before. Reed stood in front of the monitors, fists clenched. They took her, he said, right under our noses. Cross looked broken. Why her? Because she was close, Reed replied, and because she knew too much. The search began immediately. Every corridor, every storage room, every maintenance shaft. Hours passed. Nothing. At 3:12 a.m., an alarm triggered near the old laundry annex, a section rarely used since upgrades years earlier. Reed arrived to find the door ajar. Inside, the lights flickered. The air was damp and cold. And there, seated in a chair bolted to the floor, was Captain Nora Vance. Alive. Barely. Her wrists were zip-tied. Her face bruised. Her eyes locked onto Reed with desperate urgency. They're not just running drugs, she gasped. They're running people. Reed froze. What do you mean? Vance coughed, blood flecking her lips. Black Rock is a hub. Messages. Orders. Contracts. Executions. All from inside. Reyes isn't alone. There's a council. A council? Reed echoed. 7 men, she whispered. 1 in each block. They vote. They decide who lives, who dies. Hale voted wrong. Before Reed could respond, Vance's body went rigid. Her eyes widened in terror. No, Reed said, rushing forward. No, stay with me. Her head slumped forward. Flat line. The doctor arrived seconds later, but it was already over. Another puncture wound. Another perfect kill. Reed slammed his fist against the wall, rage and fear crashing together. This wasn't an investigation anymore. It was a war, and the enemy was invisible, embedded, patient. As dawn broke, Reed received a sealed envelope slipped under his office door. No return address. No fingerprints. Inside was a single sheet of paper. 7 names. 6 were crossed out. 1 remained. Lucas Reed. And beneath it, a handwritten note. Welcome to the council. The prison lights flickered. And somewhere inside Blackrock, a vote had just been cast. The paper felt heavier than it should have, as if the ink itself carried weight. Lucas Reed stood alone in the warden's office, staring at his own name, the last one left uncrossed. Outside the reinforced glass, Blackrock hummed with its usual mechanical rhythm. Doors locking, vents breathing, cameras swiveling. But Reed knew now that none of it truly belonged to the system. It belonged to them. 7 men, 1 council, a prison that wasn't a cage, but a throne room. Reed folded the paper carefully and slid it into his jacket. Panic would get him killed faster than any toxin. If the council wanted him aware, it meant they believed awareness itself was power. That meant they were confident. Overconfident, maybe, or they wanted him scared. Warden Cross entered the office, her face drawn, eyes rimmed red from a night without sleep. Internal affairs is on the way, she said. So is Homeland Security. This place is about to crawl with suits. Reed didn't look up. They won't find anything that matters. Cross stiffened. You think this goes deeper than Reyes? Reed met her gaze. I think Reyes is just a speaker. By mid-morning, Blackrock had become a pressure cooker. Federal agents filled the corridors, their presence doing little to calm the guards. Everyone was a suspect now. Every glance felt loaded. Every closed door felt dangerous. Reed walked through cell block A under escort, his senses sharpened. Inmates watched him silently from behind reinforced glass, their expressions unreadable. No taunts, no threats. That silence was intentional. They were watching the vote play out. In cell block B, an inmate named Arthur Klein was found hanging in his cell. Official report. Suicide. Reed didn't need to see the body to know the truth. Who was he? Reed asked the guard. White collar, the guard replied. Former logistics consultant. No gang ties. Reed stopped walking. Check his financials. Hours later, the results came back. Klein had laundered money, millions of it, through shell companies tied to multiple international crime syndicates. Not a gangster. An accountant. One of the 7. Reed said quietly. 6 crossed out. 1 to go. Reed requested one more interview with Daniel Reyes. This time, Reyes didn't smile when he entered the room. You're running out of time, Reyes said calmly. The council doesn't like uncertainty. Reed placed the paper on the table between them. Reyes glanced at it, then leaned back. So you've been invited. Why me? Reed asked. Why not kill me? Reyes' eyes were steady. Because you're useful. You see systems. You dismantle them, or you protect them. You want me corrupt. I want you aligned, Reyes replied. This prison is proof of concept. Order created from chaos. You shut us down here, we rebuild somewhere else. Or you help us stabilize. Reed laughed once, bitter. You murdered 2 people. Reyes nodded. To save hundreds. Silence stretched between them. The vote isn't about killing you, Reyes continued. It's about whether you're an obstacle or an asset. And if I refuse? Reyes smiled faintly. Then the council will correct the mistake of inviting you. That night, Reed didn't return to his quarters. He stayed in the control room, watching live feeds, cross-referencing data, hunting patterns. At 1:58 a.m., he saw it. 7 cameras, 1 in each cell block, looped simultaneously. The vote was happening. Reed keyed his radio. Lockdown medical, laundry, and maintenance. Now! Static. Then, negative, sir. Those systems aren't responding. Of course they weren't. A scream echoed through the east wing. Then another. Reed ran. In the infirmary, an inmate lay convulsing, guards frozen in terror. Reed pushed through, scanning the room. No syringes, no needles. Then he saw it, the 4-line. Air embolism, the doctor whispered. They introduced it remotely. Reed looked up at the camera. You're not invisible, he said aloud. You're predictable. He sprinted back to the hidden chamber beneath cell block D. The door was already open. Inside, the equipment hummed unattended. On the main screen, 7 names appeared. 6 were red. 1 blinked white. Lucas Reed. A timer began to count down. Reed ripped cables from the wall, smashing terminals with his elbow. Sparks flying. The timer slowed, then froze. Alarms screamed throughout Blackrock. Not the control alerts of protocol, but raw system failures cascading one after another. For the first time, the prison lost control. Reed staggered back as armed response teams flooded the corridor. Behind them, technicians swarmed the chamber, shouting over one another. "It's over," someone yelled. Reed wasn't convinced. At dawn, Daniel Reyes was found dead in his cell. No puncture wound, no poison, just a note folded neatly on his chest. The council dissolves when its architect falls. Official statements called it suicide. The media moved on within days, distracted by the next headline. Blackrock underwent restructuring. New leadership, new systems. But Reed knew better. Because 3 months later, sitting in his office hundreds of miles away, he received a package with no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper. 7 names. 1 was crossed out, Daniel Reyes. 6 remained. And at the bottom, a familiar line, written in careful ink, "Order requires maintenance." Reed stared at the page, the weight of it settling in his chest. They were never imprisoned. They were only waiting. And somewhere, far beyond Blackrock's walls, the council was voting again. If you think this story was intense, you're not ready for the next one.